pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. We have no presentations and awards tonight. We have no personal appearances, so we'll now move on into staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Kraft to make a staff report for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Mr. Mayor, members of council, in addition to my written report, I just wanted to update the council that the recently approved stop signs on Sunset Lane were installed last week. That concludes my staff report. I'm available for any questions council may have.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions, Mike? Okay. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Kraft. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a report for Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council, I have also submitted a written staff report, just a couple highlights. The Optimus shelter, my park crew began the rehab this week. We hope to have that completed unless we find those things that lurk behind. Once you start digging into a project, you never know, but we hope to have that completed by the end of the week, which is great timing for the opening of soccer season. So hope that all goes well. Our restrooms, we did have some damage during the deep freeze to a couple of our restroom facilities, so they are scheduled to be repaired this week. We are scheduled to open this weekend for soccer, and then we'll lock them back up. Once all the repairs are done, we'll open up for the season. We're optimistic it'll be sometime next week, and then the restrooms will be open for the year. We have received word that we are now a Tree City USA once again. This will be consecutively since 2013, so congratulations to my guys for taking care of that. And that is all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mustine, I just had one question. On the report, it talked about social soccer. What is social soccer?
Oh, excellent question. Social soccer is another division that we've added that's just below recreation soccer. It's a little less competitive. It is smaller teams, less restricted rules, more focusing on skill development, and it's fewer games. It's a little cheaper for those families who can't afford the other higher recreation leagues. So we now have 3 different types of sports, and we're doing this in all of our sports, which is independent for competitive teams to come rent our facilities, play in competitive leagues, recreation where you sign up and we distribute you into teams, and the social league, which is what I just explained. So it's kind of what I would call a watered down recreation league, but it's very popular, and we're pretty excited. This is our first season of it.
So you're doing this with all ages or just the youth?
We offer it for all of the youth ages. If there's not enough numbers, then we fold them into the recreation division.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Serco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mustine, again, I thank you. We talked briefly from the Optimus side of it, as I'm the Vice President of the Optimus side, and of course, Mr. Townsend's the President. We thank you for working with us to work on the building there, our building at the Rec Park. You said you started some of those repairs today. And again, I just want to say thank you very much for allowing us to work with you to get that done. We appreciate it.
No, thank you. We appreciate it.
Any other questions of Mr. Mustine? If not, Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. I would ask Ms. Chardu to make a report on the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, sir. Council members and Mr. Mayor, the updated Gantt chart is in your packets. We are moving forward with 2 plans that are near completion and under kind of a first review with the rest of staff. And then we have re-engaged Corey Henry with Bushy Head Law for the annexation plan. It was initially started in, I believe, 2018. So we're following that initial scope of services, but need that to help determine some of the other plans like the land use plan and transportation and water, etc. Lynchpin has also been consulted with for a recruitment and retention plan. And then we're working diligently on the land use plan, since some other plans such as sanitary sewer, water, and transportation are contingent on it before they can move forward. And then Parks has worked to put together some focus groups to help better assess the priorities that residents have and ultimately what they use and like most about the park so that they can help with their priorities going forward. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions?
All right, thank you. Mr.
Thank you,
Fearborn?
Ms. Shardu. I would ask Mr. Murdoch to make a report for emergency management this evening.
Good evening, Council. It's kind of weird trying to look side to side here, so I apologize. I'm just here tonight to give a brief update on the weather from last week to help and some ways that the Council could help us out with communication to the public. Instead of a blizzard last week, we obviously had our first tornado warning of the year that impacted our city. And so we did sound our warning sirens multiple times last week, and I just wanted to go over a couple of things regarding that. In 2018, we did implement a siren warning protocol within the city in consultation with the National Weather Service and other jurisdictions on what those best practices would be for sounding sirens, duration, that kind of thing. So our sirens sound for 3 minutes at a time, and then we will sound them every 15 minutes for the duration of an event. That's why last week you heard us sound them multiple times as warnings were extended multiple times that continued to impact at least a portion of the city of Raymore, and we also need to consider Lake Winnebago. So if it's also going to impact Lake Winnebago, we also would be sounding them as a result of a warning that impacts their jurisdiction as well. So that's why you heard them sound multiple times during that time. That plan, that siren protocol, is also included within our emergency operations plan, which was approved last fall by the state of Missouri. I actually did reach out to the National Weather Service today to ask about has there been any updates to best practices, and they said that siren sounding protocols are still all over the map across the country, though ours is still pretty good. In the Kansas City region, there are multiple jurisdictions who are sounding every 10 minutes, but it just kind of varies between 10 and 15 minutes. Those jurisdictions who have new sirens do sometimes sound for the duration of the event, but that's pretty rare throughout our region. How can you guys help us? Number one is, as you all know, our warning sirens are designed for the people who are outdoors, not indoors in their basements watching sports. And so if you could help us to remind people that those sirens are for people to get inside and then seek more information. That's the number one way that you guys could help. We still get questions, calls after every single severe weather event related to why I can't hear the sirens. But the second part of that is if any member of the public or you all see a siren that isn't working or you don't hear one within your neighborhood, if you are outside, to also let us know so we can actually go out and check to make sure that all of those are functioning properly. That also is a great way that the public can help us out. Should we need to obviously sound them here in the very near future. And then lastly, as severe weather is coming in, is to let people know that not only do we want them seeking more information, but there are a couple of other reasons. There's one other reason that we would sound a siren if there is no tornado warning. We will sound a siren even if there are straight line winds and somebody has reported, either police or fire has reported the sight of a funnel cloud. So that's another thing that people could say. So sometimes you may hear a siren before a tornado warning has actually been issued. That would be something else that you could really help us out with. So I just wanted to let you know that's why the sirens were sounded numerous times last week, and I think many of you probably got the Everbridge notification that they're going to start including everybody within the county in their notifications as well, instead of trying to target the polygon as weather comes in, as they got multiple complaints about that as well. So
Yeah, so I'd like to add on to that. As the chair of the ESB, we did get quite a few questions about middle of the night thunderstorm warnings for people that hadn't signed up for that particular warning. However, I know she said that my directors did go out to Everbridge and talk about a countywide, but I think we're dialing that back again to the polygons and making sure that only those areas that are checked when they come on board are the ones that will receive those specific warnings. So we're kind of dialing that back again after our board meeting last Wednesday.
that's good. I have not gotten that email, so we want to get that.
Well, we had her
communication
working
out to
on
all
that.
of us.
Yeah, we had her working
perfect,
on that. I don't
perfect.
know if she's been able to
I
straighten
think that's a
that out
good
with
decision,
Everbridge.
by the way, because alerting people in the southern part of the county for something that's
In the
happening all
northern
the way
part,
up here.
We agree.
Yeah.
And that was our discussion.
Okay.
So thank you, though.
Yeah, no problem. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer that. Anything else?
Anything? Okay, thank you, sir. Oh, wait, Mrs. Badogwa has something.
Can I ask a question not about tornado warnings?
Absolutely.
So I had a phone call today, someone wondering how is the best way to get information about COVID vaccination opportunities, especially for people who aren't on social media?
So probably the very best way is they're more than welcome to call me. I keep a running list of all of the events going on within the community, especially as you mentioned, if you're not on social media or the internet, because there are obviously a lot of good apps and trackers for that now that have come out. But we do keep a running list, especially those that are going to be local to us. So we have one at Cass Regional coming up, and then we have a mass vaccination that's coming up at Ray-Pec High School, April 2nd and 3rd. That'll be 2,000 vaccines that will be going on that weekend.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. Mr. Fearborn, anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. Yes, sir. I would ask Mr. Ike to give the council an update on our use tax information campaign.
Thank you, sir. Just wanted to remind the council that we will be holding a town hall on Wednesday, March 24th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Centerview. The town hall will give residents an opportunity to speak with staff members as well as department heads from the 3 areas that are really being targeted during this use tax campaign: our police department, public works department, and the parks department. We'll also have staff members from community development services and the economic development department, as well as myself, Mr. Fearborn, and others, just to, if folks have questions, we want to make sure that someone is there present that can answer, talk about the use tax, not just what a use tax is, how it differs from a sales tax, but also what programs will be impacted moving forward and the need for that as it goes before voters. Any questions you might have about the event itself, I'm happy to answer. Looking forward to joining the Sunrise Optimists tomorrow morning, bright and early, to also answer some questions, and absolutely would be, if there are other events coming up that maybe you need postcards or you need more of the flyers and mailers, certainly can provide those to you as well if you have a need.
Thank you, Mike. Date and time again of the
It's going to be Wednesday, March 24th, 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Centerview.
Okay.
And we have that information also posted on our website at raymore.com/use tax.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Ike? Yes, Mr. Serco.
And if I'm correct, you're going to be having at the Raymore Chamber luncheon tomorrow? Are you
Correct, yes,
speaking?
that as well.
Yes. So I want to make sure I remind people, if they're going to the chamber meeting or want to go to the chamber luncheon tomorrow, which I'm assuming is over here at Centerview?
Yes, also at Centerview.
Centerview, they could hear it. If they didn't get it in the morning, they can actually get that from you tomorrow. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Abdelgawad, yes.
Quick question. Seeing all the yard signs popping up all around town, do we have yard signs?
We do not have yard signs. We felt that because of how informational the campaign was, we wanted to make sure that we kind of played it safe on that front. Most of the yard signs I think you're seeing are coming from an advocacy group, one way or the other.
Yep. Anyone else? Thank you, sir. Mr.
Thank
Fearborn?
Yeah, as Mr. Ike had indicated, yes, there are no informational yard signs out there. They are either a very adamant vote no for one particular issue or a very adamant vote yes on another issue. And I would add that both of those representatives for both of those issues, as well as the city, have been invited by the chamber to speak at the end of the forum about their item. We understand that both the Metropolitan Community College Group and the school district will be there to make presentations on their particular items. The mayor has graciously acceded to actually making our presentation for us at that particular event as well. And that will be after everybody's is done and the room has been vacated. It is our understanding that the chamber for the forum, it will be in this room. The chamber intends to have the council members who are associated with the forum be the only ones in here, with the school members waiting outside, and then once the council members have vacated, the school people will come in so that we're keeping social distancing, and then of course the limited number of seats that are available here. Last item that we have this evening, sir, just want to remind the council that next week is the 5th Monday, so our next meeting will actually be the first Monday of April, following the Easter weekend and the night before the elections. That concludes staff reports this evening, sir.
Thank you. And just to remind everyone that that candidate forum is Wednesday, March the 31st from 7 to 9 p.m. here at City Hall. Okay. Any questions, Mr. Fearborn? Yes, Mr. Circo.
Yeah, I did see Cass County sent out some language on the ballots, and we were on there for our use tax, and it was pretty explanatory. It looked pretty good. I kind of liked the way they put it together so people could understand what the use tax was and, you know, what it's going to mean to the people. It looked pretty good.
Good. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We only have one item on the consent agenda tonight, and that's the city council minutes for March the 8th. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve consent agenda item A, city council minutes from March 8th, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda and the city council minutes for March the 8th. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Now move on to unfinished business, of which we only have one item under unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3604 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3604 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving and authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Lippert Mechanical Services Contractors for preventative HVAC maintenance and repairs for a 3-year period.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the second reading of Bill 3608, award of contract HVAC maintenance.
I have 3604, is that correct?
3604, yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3604. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to new business. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3605 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3605 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Public Water Supply District Number 10 of Cass County, Missouri, for mutual cooperation, including termination of water service for non-payment of sewer bills.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Zur to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mayor, members of the council. Before you this evening is Bill 3605. This seeks authority for the approval of an agreement between Water District 10. I've had the opportunity to work with the legal counsel for the Water District on this, and the Water District has already had the opportunity to review and consider this, this proposed agreement. The agreement, if approved, would allow for the Water District services to be terminated for individuals who are receiving sewer service from the city, water service from the Water District, allow for purposes of collection efforts for anyone who is failing to pay the sewer services. This provision is allowed under Section 710.370 of the Raymore City Code of Ordinances, which contemplates termination and disconnection of water service for any customer that fails to pay on their sewer bill, because we do have a couple of customers out there that are receiving water service from the Water District and sewer service from the city. This agreement will help to facilitate that. The agreement also helps to facilitate the city's receipt of meter readings from the Water District, which will allow us to continue to bill accurately for purposes of the sewer services. I'm happy to provide any additional answers if there are questions from the council. That would conclude staff report on this item.
Any questions of Mr. Zur? Jonathan, I was just kind of curious, what kind of inspired this this particular bill? Mr. Fearborn?
There are a number. This is not an uncommon type of memorandum of understanding between water providers and sewer providers when it's an independent deal. We just have not had one in place with Water District 10. The inspiration for this was the fact that we do have, as Mr. Zur indicated, a couple of customers who have not paid their sewer bill to the city in a number of years to the tune of many thousands of dollars down south of here, as opposed to the cost of taking them to circuit court to get restitution for those dollars. Much easier to enter into a memorandum of understanding on a very friendly basis with Water District Number 10, and shortly after the council passes this, then we will request a Water District 10 to be shutting these customers' water off.
Okay. Could I add to that?
And if you're wondering about the emphasis on the word bill from Mr. Zur, I constantly have to correct him that a bill number is not an ordinance number, because he always writes ordinance in there. So after about the third time this past time, I actually sang the song "I'm Just a Bill Up on the Hill" to him. So.
Is that what you wanted to add, Jonathan?
That is not what I was going to add.
Not particularly, no.
I was going to add that there is authority both under ordinance as well as state statute for this agreement, and options available for the city if we don't have this kind of agreement. But thank you very much, and yes, the ordinance gets ahead of myself a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Holman.
Mr. Fearborn, if my memory serves me correctly, we've had an agreement like this in place with the city of Belton for some time. Seems like I remember something coming before the council several years ago about some customers of theirs or ours that live on either side of Kentucky, which is a shared city limits for both entities, and we have an agreement with them for such such purposes. We have some that are maybe using their water and our sewer, vice versa, simply because the infrastructure as it was built out and there wasn't available to both cities or both to the customers from a single entity at the time.
That is correct, sir.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Anyone else? If there's no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3605, Mutual Cooperation Agreement, Water District 10.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I will second the motion for Bill 3605.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3605. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Can I please have the first reading of Bill 3606 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3606 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Digital Ally for the purchase and installation of body-worn and in-car cameras in the amount of $177,849.40, and to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. If you all recall, we did have a nice work session on this particular item, but I'll ask Mr. Fearborn if there's a staff report.
Thank you, sir. Body-worn cameras by police officers will greatly enhance the effectiveness and transparency of police operations in the opinion of staff. In-car camera systems currently in use by the city from Digital Ally are scheduled for replacement in June of this year. Staff is recommending an award of contract to Digital Ally using a pre-bid government services contract for the purchase and installation of body-worn and in-car camera systems. That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any additional questions of Mr. Fearborn on this item? Thank you, sir. If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3606, award of contract body and dashboard cameras.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3606. Any further discussion? Ms. Abdel, go ahead.
Just a quick comment for anyone who's watching and may see this as a really quick decision. It was a great meeting last week, even though I wasn't here. I was watching it online. Chief shared lots and lots of information. There was a lot of discussion about this last week. So if anyone wants more information past the discussion tonight, I would highly recommend watching that meeting.
Yep. Thank you very much. Anyone else? If there's no further discussion, then all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3607 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3607 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2021 operating and internal services budgets.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. As I had outlined with the council at the work session last week, a fiscal year 2021 budget amendment is necessary to fund the purchase of these body-worn and dash cameras approved by the council in Bill 3605. Bill 3607 calls for an amendment to transfer $140,000 from the general fund available fund balance and $40,000 from the VERP fund balance to complete this purchase, maintenance, and warranty contract for the next 5 years. The transfer from available fund balance within the general fund would leave projected available fund balance within that fund still over $1 million at approximately $1,150,000. That concludes staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn or staff? Yes, Mr. Townsend.
Just to make sure I heard correctly, in your comments, Mr. Fearborn, you said bill approved in previous bill 3605, but I believe you mean 3606.
3606, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3607, Budget Amendment Body and Dash Camera Purchase.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion,
Thank you, Mr. Holman. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3607. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Now move on to the last item under new business. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3608 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3608 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2021 budget to reflect changes in the adopted 2020 to 2021 employee salary range chart.
Thank you. I know we covered this again at the work session, Mr. Fearborn, but if you could recap everything on this for us again.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Icky to make this recap.
Thank you, sir. Staff is recommending amendments to the employee salary range chart to include the addition of a part-time animal shelter attendant, Also includes a proposed change to vacate Range 1 and move the office assistant in the Parks Department and the assistant building technician in Buildings and Grounds to Range 2. Additionally, staff is also recommending the creation of an assistant staff engineer in Range 16, and this has been a process that staff has been looking at for the past year as we have been looking in the field to recruit either the next assistant public works director or assistant staff engineer as we're looking to fill that position within the public works department. I'm happy to answer any questions about this item.
Thank you, Mr. Icky. Any questions of Mr. Icky about this item? If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3608, Budget Amendment Personnel.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3608. Any further discussion? Mr. Jacobson, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir. I should have spoke up earlier, but Mr. Fearborn, I was curious. Both of these items that we're dealing with are very important, and you guys have won a budget award for 10 years running now. So with us making these amendments, I heard you say over $1 million in the general fund. Are you comfortable with where we're at with us making these amendments? I assume you are, but.
I am, sir.
Okay, thank you.
As comfortable as I can ever be when we're spending money.
You bet. Anyone else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you all. We'll now move on to public comments. If someone from the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one come forward, we will now move on to mayor-council communication. I'll start to my left with Mr. Townsend tonight. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have not a lot tonight. I just want to also thank Mr. Mustine for the Parks and Rec on the support with the Optimist Shelter. Also, kudos as well on looking at the staff report this evening and a lot of the way the Parks Department has been able to pivot during this season of COVID and the unique things that are out there for this month. Particularly, we couldn't do the Easter egg hunt, but you have some pretty cool things that are lined up. The Unicorn Day, you know, the scavenger hunt, all those things are pretty outstanding. Give us some options for our community to get out of the house and still stay engaged and still enjoy the wonderful things we have in our community. So outstanding job to your staff on that as well, and to all the staff as well this evening for things we've done, approving tonight the first reading of the different police department body cameras and cameras for the vehicles, and a host of other things that are still going on within the community. But again, thank you to staff for all your support.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wanted to compliment Mr. Mustine and his staff on the recent award they got. You guys continue to do outstanding work. Make us very proud with the Parks and Rec that we have here. Also want to thank everybody who is currently getting out and helping pick up the trash. And we had the Chamber, I believe, sponsored something Saturday, and I saw a lot of people out picking up trash. The wind has done a pretty good number on our community with everything blowing around. So thanks to everyone who did that. And on a side note, Mr. Zur, had it been up to me, I would have allowed you an opportunity for rebuttal.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to talk about one issue. I wanted to thank the Raymore Peculiar School District for keeping things the way they are. The continuity that we've had this year where we have been able to have school go on, and I say this as a teacher there, but the stress levels that some of the kids are incurring had we switched would have escalated immensely. And today was the beginning of some of our testing that goes on. We had a test today, and we have some tomorrow. And then the last week of April, it's testing almost every day. We've got ACT tests, and we've got International Baccalaureate, AP tests all through May. And it would have been very difficult for some of those students to successfully make those high-achieving goals that they had everything in their schedule been upended. So that's not necessarily something that we deal with here, but I appreciate it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did want to touch on the cameras, touch on what Councilwoman Abdelgawad said. We had an extensive meeting last Monday, work session that's online. Please go on that. We talked in detail about the cameras, about our staffing with Mr. Mr. Fearborn and the chief. So go on that last week. Look at that if you're curious about these items we've passed tonight, because they're very essential to the city and to our police department and to what we're doing in staffing, so that's important. I would also say we got a lot of information on our upcoming Parks and Rec about the egg hunts and the different things. So I guess you can go on the Raymore website, and is it under Parks and Rec, these items that are coming up? So please look at that, because we have some good items coming up for the egg hunt and the Unicorn Day and different items for the city. So I just touched on that, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Holman.
I'll yield my time to the other council member from Ward 3 this evening, sir.
Mr. Barber.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I guess I have to now. I'd just like to remind the council, when we were doing our 2021 budget, that we all kept our hands off that reserve balance, that $1 million reserve balance. A lot of unknowns we didn't know, staff recommendation, and I just appreciate us doing that and then allowing us to do things like we're doing tonight. So I can think of no better way to spend that money, and we didn't know that when we were doing the budget. And so with things changing, again, I just want to say I'm proud of the council and staff for keeping the hands off that $1 million. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just take a minute. I want to apologize for being absent the last few weeks. My fellow council members, Mayor, probably know I was taking care of family, and then as council members, we can be exposed to COVID and have to quarantine too. So I was staying home so that I didn't make anyone else sick. So I apologize for missing the meetings. And on that same note, I'm so thankful that here in the city, we've focused on the sound system in here and the cameras in here, and having worked as a council on Zoom for so many months, I felt like I was right there at the meeting with everybody almost, as I watched along, or even as I watched it after the meeting happened, if that was the case. So it's great that we have the opportunity as council members to, if we have to be absent from a meeting, to still be able to stay up to date on what's happening and ask questions if we need to stay caught up even though we're gone, especially now with COVID when you have possibly the chance to be quarantined for a few weeks. So again, I apologize for my absence and sorry to have missed being here personally, but thankful to have been able to keep up. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of great comments tonight. I won't repeat any of those. All very well said. I will add just one more thing. It seems like this time of year we see an increase in crimes of opportunity, people lifting handles on cars and thefts from vehicles, thefts of vehicles, thefts of firearms from vehicles that aren't locked. So please, if anybody's watching, be sure and lock your vehicles. Tell your friends, your family to let's try to keep these locked up this year and keep those crimes down. Those are, for me, that's the most annoying thing, is seeing people getting firearms taken out of a vehicle that was unlocked. So it'd be great if that didn't happen this year. So let's do what we can to try to prevent that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. So we've gotten a lot of great work done in about 36 minutes, 35 and a half minutes. It is a streamlined process, and I would echo what some of my council members have said about getting online if you were wondering about the things that we passed tonight. A lot of great work done in the work sessions. And one of the things that I have seen come out of this great working environment that we have going on right here with this council and with this staff is that we get a lot accomplished. And I think one of the people that would tell you that to your face right now is a former council member who we just lost the other day. She was a good friend. Judy Goff passed away on March 7th. I didn't think it'd affect me like it did. But her son Phil and I are good friends. Phil's a Leawood cop. And Judy was here as a councilwoman during some tumultuous times, to say the least. And she experienced those things and tried to keep a lid on things as things moved along. She had some great input. She did the same thing with planning and zoning, brought about some great calming effect and input at those meetings. A wonderful lady that will not be able to replace in our community. But she and her husband both passed away just recently. Bob passed away last year. But I just wanted to recognize Judy Goff's work on the council. She was a great lady, and she will be missed, and I wanted to let her family know that. That's all I have. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Yes, Mr. Townsend.
Move that we adjourn city council meeting for March the 22nd.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, sir. All those